This time on Bernie's Out West Journeys, Seeing America First, I visited a national wildlife refuge and found good work being done, although it isn't what you might expect. What do you do if there's something found in nature that had very limited availability, but so many folks want it that it threatens its very existence? And oh, by the way, the people that have a right to these items shouldn't have to pay for them. I won't beat around the bush any further. The items are bald and golden eagle feathers and other parts. A point of history that isn't disputed is that the early explorers to the New World did not find empty lands, but thriving civilizations. The American Indian, as they are called today, had cultures for thousands of years before the Old World found them. My study has uncovered that the eagle plays a major role in most all American Indian cultural and religious activities. Fast forward to 1782, when the Continental Congress adopted the bald eagle as the national symbol, and whereas the bald eagle thus became the symbolic representation of a new nation under a new government in a new world, and whereas by the act of Congress and by the tradition and custom during the life of this nation, the bald eagle is no longer a mere bird of biological interest, but a symbol of the American ideals of freedom. Numerous laws, acts, and treaties have been enacted since, and today, after much back and forth and soul-searching, the interested parties are making progress on how to treat these birds. An alarm was raised about the accelerated demise of the eagles in 1962, when the book Silent Spring was published by American biologist Rachel Carson. And by the early 1970s, we, aka all of us, came close to losing the eagle to the chemical DDT. But the banning of DDT saved the eagle from the jaws of death, and they have survived and thrived. So where are we today? The American Indian has a long-standing vested interest in the eagle, and the U.S. government staked its claim some 237 years ago. So I'm guessing that both sides want the eagle to survive and be the symbol of each group's desires. During a visit to the 15,000-acre Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge in Commerce City, Colorado, about 30 minutes west of the Denver International Airport, I learned about the National Eagle Repository. Along with the Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge being a home where the bison, the black-tailed prairie dog, and the black-footed ferret play, it's also where the National Eagle Repository, a one-of-a-kind facility, does business. Its purpose is to receive, inventory, store, and dispose of confiscated wildlife property, assuring 100% accountability. And they also receive, evaluate, store, and distribute dead bald eagle and golden eagle parts and feathers to Native Americans who are enrolled members of federally recognized tribes throughout the United States. I'm of the opinion that reverence for our national symbol and the cultural religious needs of the American Indian are finding common ground. As long as we keep talking, there is hope that we can better understand each other. After taking a public tour, I asked to return and take the tour again, but slower. The first time seemed like I was taking a drink from a fire hose, trying to remember all that information. I was granted a second tour, and here it is. Would you please introduce yourself, and what do you do here?
My name is Sarah Metzer, and I'm the Education Specialist here at the National Eagle and Wildlife Property Repository.
And I have a number of sheets here in front of me that I have pulled off of your website. So we are here at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal Wildlife Refuge?
National Wildlife Refuge.
Wildlife Refuge. And there's 5 of these refuges in Colorado. There's like 3 kind of close together here.
Yes, this is part of the Front Range complex.
The front.
Yep.
And the thing of it is that I stumbled across you folks when I saw that a couple of times a month you do tours of this area. But now your tours are like twofold. That why don't you say a few words about where we are sitting right now? I feel like I'm in deep, dark Africa.
Sure. So it's interesting that our facility falls under the Office of Law Enforcement with the Fish and Wildlife Service. So even though the Refuge system is also part of the Fish and Wildlife Service, we're technically a separate program. And the two programs that support our law enforcement officers are the Wildlife Property Program and then the National Eagle Repository, the Eagle Program. So the space that we're sitting in here with a lot of the different taxidermied specimens, the curiosities, the parts and pieces of various wildlife that has been incorporated into products is our Wildlife Property Program. And these are all things that have been seized or confiscated at ports of entry to the United States by those law enforcement officers. So we see all different species and things that are coming from around the world. And we have a small subset of them here in this room to show a lot of the value systems that go into how we use wildlife as a natural resource.
Because I'm looking at a polar bear, a giraffe head, a very proud lion. We're not here for that, or at least I'm not here for that, because I'm really interested in this eagle thing, and that has really
the other programs.
Yep, the other program, and the sheet that I downloaded from the National Eagle Repository website. That this really has caught my attention, because it seems that this is a collection area for deceased eagles, both bald and golden eagles.
Correct.
And okay, you do.
Yes.
So that, and what kind of organizations provide these deceased animals to you?
Yeah, so the National Eagle Repository, in contrast, it has a similar function that we are collecting eagles that have been discovered deceased from around the United States. So we receive them from our federal wildlife officers and our other law enforcement agents, as well as our state partners. So state wildlife officers or Department of Natural Resource counterparts that are around the country. And then we also receive eagles from rehabilitation facilities that are rehabbing these animals, or they have ambassador animals that then pass away or molt their feathers. A lot of those end up here in our central repository.
But could we walk over to that hallway? And you've got such great displays. Okay, so now we're in the hallway. Oh my gosh, there wasn't a lot going on the last time I was here. Could you kind of walk me through what I'm seeing?
Sure. So within the lab space here, when eagles are shipped to us, we evaluate them. And so what we're seeing in the lab here is we've got space to be able to evaluate every single bird that's coming through. And what we're looking at here is a couple of different, we've got a couple of our staff members as well as volunteers that come in to assist us too. And they will sort loose feathers to determine what species it came from and whether it's a wing feather or tail feather. So that's what we have one of our volunteers working on over at the table there. Along the lab benches, the main benches there, that's where we will process the eagles as they come in. So we will evaluate them, look over their wings, the head, the tail, the torso of the bird. And on occasion, depending on how the eagles come to us, we may need to dry them out a little bit to make sure that we mitigate any additional decomposition. We don't want those feathers to rot. And so you see a couple of the eagles that are out on the table doing a bit of drying before we will do a final evaluation on them. Okay. Once we do that evaluation to determine what is still usable on the eagle, we do try and maintain as much as possible. And to keep that in as good shape as possible, that's where you see the two large industrial freezers that we have in there. They're rather large, and we keep them quite cold to ensure that the eagle remains, the parts, the feathers, any of that stays in the best condition possible until we can mail that to its applicant.
Okay. Now the gal there in the blue jumpsuit.
Mm-hmm.
she's being very particular at what she's doing.
Yes.
Has she received some kind of specialized training? But she really seems to know what the heck she's doing.
She does. So a lot of the work that's being done here, most of us have some type of biological background. And in the case of some of our specialists at present, they do have some of that migratory bird experience, or they have some experience working around birds, not eagles necessarily, but other raptors. A lot of it is hands-on training, though. It is on-the-job training. And for our volunteers here, they spend hours doing this. And after a while, you really get the hang of it, and especially the meticulous nature of which we're reviewing and evaluating each one of these eagles.
Like she picks up the feather, she kind of holds it against the other 3 or 4, sets it back down, kind of pokes around for another one. So she's looking to really try to make a nice match.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, that is fantastic. So do First Nation people come in from time to time to maybe share with you information that can make you more efficient or better at what you do?
Yeah, one of the hallmarks of this program is that any large changes that are made to the way that we evaluate or process or receive or distribute, anytime we're making a significant change to the program, that actually goes out to tribal consultation. And so we will provide the opportunity for feedback from all of those tribal nations, whether it's in person or over the phone. And so we've had a number of those in the past decade as we've started to make changes to this program. And as part of that feedback, we're able to incorporate a number of those suggestions to ensure that we're doing this in the most culturally sensitive and appropriate way possible.
Right. Yeah. This is terrific. That I did not know any of this existed until just a few months ago. But if we could now, so we're in the hallway.
Yes.
And so you've got these fantastic displays. So I believe we're looking at a golden eagle.
It is. It's an immature golden eagle. So the juvenile plumage it's a little bit different until they molt into that adult plumage.
Okay, so here's the animal with wings, probably somewhat spread, having had a successful hunt. But when we get to the end of the hall, I believe that you do know something about that headdress.
A little bit.
Okay, well, that's good.
Okay, bit, yes.
But now so at this point, would you please remind people when tours are generally available, and how would you get access to a tour here?
Yeah, and we're in the process of changing that a little bit right now. So we're looking at moving to more of a quarterly model for general tours that are open to the general public.
Okay.
And we'll be communicating that via our website, any of those available dates, as well as advertising that in the Wild News Programs newsletter, which the Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge puts out on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. So we will be advertising any of those available dates where anybody who would like to learn more about our facility and learn what we do here will be able to sign up for a tour.
Because the one thing that is fantastic to me is that you're allowing me to stand within like 6 inches of this taxidermy bird, and there's no glass or fence, and I dare not touch it. But you really are allowing me to really see what this animal is all about. This is fantastic. I can't go to a museum and experience this. This is the only place I'm going to get this. Okay, this shadow box here up on the wall, looks like that's something that somebody built over time. Any particular stories about that, or?
I don't have the backstory on that.
Okay, no, that's fine. But for folks, when you get here, it is something to see. Okay, now we'll move over here on the other side of the hallway. So now this is a bald eagle.
It is, yes.
Okay, wow. And as I had mentioned to you off tape, they never look happy. Even after they're probably just fed. This is Bernie J, and you're listening to Bernie's Journeys, produced in Colorado Springs, Colorado, in view of America's mountain, the 14,115-foot Pikes Peak. And I invite you to contact me at berniestv@gmail.com. That's BERNIESTV. And please share comments and or suggestions on this show or ideas for future travel adventures that I can explore for you. Now, let's get back to the show. They still don't look happy. But now this is great. Now the distinguishing characteristics here is that the white head, that doesn't happen at birth, does it?
No, when they're first born, after they've fledged and they grow into what we consider that juvenile or that immature plumage.
Yeah.
They are mostly kind of a brown with the speckles, and we can see that especially on the tails that we have over in the following section. But before they morph into that adult plumage, they are going to look more brown and with white speckling colors. They won't have that adult plumage with the white tail and the white head until they are a little bit older.
Okay. Now, moving over here to a couple of shadow boxes that looks like, how do I describe it to start with? So we saw the gal in the back trying to match feathers. So we've got these two shadow boxes, and they're like 3 by 4 feet each. Why do you have this displayed?
Yeah, what we're trying to illustrate here is not only the difference in the plumage coloring, which is really distinctive on the tails, which is why we have the tail feathers here.
Okay.
But what we're trying to show here and demonstrate is one of the most popular choices for that applicants can indicate on their application is whether they want loose feathers or parts, or depending on what they're ordering, we put together 2 different types of loose feather sets. And so this is showing the 2 different types that we would put together. So you could see an example of our 10 quality feather set, which is going to include 8 wing feathers and then 2 of the tail feathers. And then 20 miscellaneous, and these might not be the top shelf 10 quality feathers, but they still have a lot of life and a lot of use left in them. And so 20 miscellaneous are the feathers that maybe have slight imperfections, but not bad. And we're putting that together in a 20 miscellaneous feather set.
Okay. Now, see, I can't tell the they all look great to me. And I guess the thing that, for my own personal education, is I'm trying to stare at these and get a good mental picture, so the next time I go to a powwow, I might be able to say, that looks like an eagle feather to me, because I've seen a real one.
Sure.
Okay, now if we move over here to this next shadow box, so this is like a whole
tail
grouping. Oh, this is a whole tail.
It's a whole tail. So eagles, if they have all their tail feathers intact, they'll have 12, and so each one of these is showing the different plumage coloring of those the 2 different age classes as well as the 2 different species. So we've got at the bottom, you've got your adult bald eagle in the corner, and then the example of the immature bald that we just talked about it's more of a brown color, and it has the white speckling that's incorporated into it. So it won't morph into that adult white plumage until it's a little bit older. And then at the top of the shadow box here is the golden eagle, and the different examples of when they're immature, when they're juveniles, they have more of a white coloring that has the dark tips. And so that demarcation has some cultural significance as well as being sought after. And then once they morph into their adult plumage, the golden eagles have much more of that rich, warm brown color with a marbling pattern, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, now with all of this great educational material that you have put together, so do you get many school groups?
We occasionally get school groups that come through here, and we do over 100 tours of this facility a year, and that doesn't include some of the folks from our own agency that we like to bring in to see kind of what we're doing on this side of the program, since for a lot of the Fish and Wildlife Service, so much of what we do is pretty diverse, and so to bring our own agency folks here to see this side of the program is pretty fascinating and pretty enjoyable to be able to share that.
Oh, this is terrific, because I've done poking around. As I had shared with you before, I do so much mindless surfing on the internet. Great pictures, but to be able to really get a feel of the texture. I'm not touching anything, but to get an understanding of the texture, of the size. And I want to come back to the picture a little bit later. Sure. Oh my gosh! Last time I was here, is this guy new, or was that?
No, this was here.
And I totally missed it.
There's so much going on here that it's easy to miss things. So this is another example of an immature golden.
So the thing here that's standing, boy, a good 6 feet tall. It looks like an Indian headdress. What can you share with me about this?
Yeah. So what is incorporating this is immature golden. So you see the white feathers with the dark tips. And as I mentioned earlier, if every single eagle has all of its tail feathers intact, it would have 12 tail feathers. So if you count how many immature golden eagle feathers we see there, it's a number of different eagles that would be represented to make a piece like this. You can see it is in a bit of a dilapidated, kind of rough condition.
It looks old.
We're not able to use the feathers off of it, but it's still a great representation. And this was actually seized as part of an investigation looking into an individual who was non-native, who did not have authorization or a permit to be able to have this. And so after that confiscation, oftentimes when we find pieces like this, we may look to repatriate some of those pieces. But in the case of many of them, if they're not a museum quality, or if we don't have a good lead on where we might repatriate it to, we are able to retain this one because it really is a striking example of how immature golden eagle feathers would be incorporated into a regalia piece.
And the way this looks to me, this looks to be an authentic piece, though there's no provenance, so we don't know for sure. It sure looks like it's old, and it's certainly handmade. But now that you give me the chance to kind of stand in front of it and look at it, the feathers, how they go from white to the dark tips, are so uniform in this piece that there's more than one eagle in this headdress.
Oh, absolutely, especially because if you used every single tail feather, you would only be able to use 12. So there are definitely more than 12
at least twice,
feathers that are incorporated into
at least
this.
Twice that much, if not,
Sure.
If not more. I find this absolutely fantastic. And I believe that you had said something about one of the options when you get stuff like this might be there was the repatriation first, and then possibly museums, but then the powers to be felt that this one probably ought to just hang out here with the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Since it was confiscated as part of a law enforcement investigation, it remains property here anyway. And our goal at this facility is that every single one of our property items has the potential to be repurposed for education. And it is doing just that. It is serving its purpose to be able to educate any visitors coming through our facility, not only about the work that we do on behalf of eagles, but it also gives that just stunning example of how immature golden eagles, since that is one of the most requested eagle feathers, and yet it is the category of eagle that we receive the fewest of at this facility. It's a really striking example of a piece made with immature golden eagle feathers.
Well, the last time I was here and went through the tour with you, because you had a great number of people, I wasn't able to ask my questions. And this has been so tremendous. You have really educated me, because I look at it now and I see it with completely different eyes than a couple of months ago when I first saw it. Back then I looked at it and my response is pretty. Because I just didn't know the nuances of what I should be looking at. That is fantastic. Well,
yeah, absolutely.
So let's see here. So the last thing that I don't know if you have any firsthand knowledge here is of this eagle painting, because I did come over to the wall and there's this great plaque of the woman who did it.
Yes.
And was this done on your watch?
Yes. So this was done just a couple years ago now. This piece in particular, we have 3 different murals here at the repository. The eagle mural was done by Ms. Ortegon here, who is Eastern Shoshone as well as Northern Arapaho. And she very kindly donated her time to be able to provide the art skill and technique to be able to craft this beautiful eagle that we see now on our wall, in addition to some of the eagle feathers that line the wall. So it's a reminder of, and especially with the stunning yellow sun, it really brightens up this hallway and is a good reminder of the spiritual and cultural significance that these animals have, because it is somewhat, when you're working and processing the number and the volume that we do, while we strive to be as culturally sensitive as possible, and you can see, the way that we are handling every feather is as delicately and as sensitively as possible. And so this is a wonderful reminder for us when we do see those eagles flying around, that any eagle feather or part that comes from this facility is being repurposed for that spiritual and cultural use, and that is it's very fulfilling for us.
Finally, a place where some of my tax dollars are being well invested.
Well, I'm gonna have to.
I know
I may have to.
That's a personal opinion, but.
And I may have to burst that bubble. Our entire facility here is run off of non-appropriated funding. So everything, there's no taxpayer dollars at work here.
Oh, really?
Yes.
To boot?
Yes. So several of the fines and fees that are collected as part of certain law enforcement investigations are pooled as a fund to be able to fund this facility, both the Eagle Repository as well as the Wildlife Property Repository.
I didn't even think I had a question there a minute ago. Well, no, that is fantastic.
It allows us also then to be able to provide this service free of charge for those applicants. So they're not paying any of the shipping cost. It could be cost prohibitive in that case. Everything that's coming from our facility that is shipped to them, we are shipping to them at our cost.
Okay. This is fantastic. It really, really is. I hope that you heard something that refreshed a fond travel memory or sparked the desire to learn more. After all, that's what travel is all about. For Bernie's Journeys, your bridge to adventure, seeing America first, this is your host, Bernie Ivershusky. Thanks for listening, and please tune in again.